Well, hey everybody, it's Wes Hagen again, and I welcome you to part two of day drinking. This is the 27th, Monday, the 27th of July. Welcome back to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, and we're jumping right in. I hope you enjoyed our little tasting of our 2014 Syrah. Quickly, let me uh, let me have a flagon of wine so I may wet my brain and say something clever. That's Aristophanes from 424 BCE. He's a pretty smart guy. I think we all drink wine, so we think we can become clever and say something interesting. So tonight, that's my goal. I want to teach you guys a little bit about the difference between Old World and New World wine. And we're going to take it from a little bit of a different perspective. Normally, I think, especially if you're learning to taste wine through the Court of Master Sommeliers or a WSET, you'd start with a deductive, basically, model where you would say, all right, so I'm tasting a wine. First thing I ask when I do a deductive tasting, Old World or New World. So where does my brain go from there? So I'm going to give you the classical education first. The classical thought would be deductive. If it's bright, fruity, and primary, chances with minimal earthiness and maybe less complexity, you kind of start thinking New World wine is about sunshine, New World wine is about extract, New World wine is about cleanliness, New World wine can be slightly boring but clean. Old World wine, you're going to expect that the terroir and the grape that's planted there has been there in simpatico for centuries, if not millennia. So as a result, because of the perfection of match between terroir as well as grape variety, you get something inimitable. You get a level of complexity, earthiness, minerality, acidity. There's something about the wine that lifts it above just being fruity, bright, and cleaner in general. And this is what we're going to be talking about, is these lines have become blurred. I have never been, to a certain extent, more confused by when I'm trying to do deductive tasting between Old World and New World and making horrible decisions on what I actually think is the right answer. I've embarrassed myself a number of times. If you weren't here for the blind tasting episode, I actually thought Grenache Rosé was a Pinot Blanc. So obviously we put ourselves out there to make mistakes. Wine is fun, and if you have a perfect palate, you're boring. If you can nail the wine every time, that's boring. It's all about fooling ourselves, changing our perspective. My idea is when I drink a wine, I like to say that drinking a flawed wine always will teach me more than drinking a perfect wine. Perfect wine is boring to me. If you're talking 100-point Parker, I'm not really interested in tasting it because it's probably not going to go with food. It's going to be so intense and so concentrated. I like wines that get 89 to 91 points. Generally wines that are well made, expressive, show the craft of the winemaker, but also lack the level of extract and ripeness that would get in the way of me tasting my damn food. I want balance. I want these things. These are the things that I learned from the Old World and I apply to my New World wines. Now, if I try to take the Old World, I go to Burgundy and I taste Burgundy. I'm like, that's it. 72 Chapelle Chambertin. This wine blew the top of my head off. This wine made me cry. This wine made me want to be a winemaker. So I'm going to go back to California and make it. No, that is the wrong attitude to have when you go to Burgundy. For me as a winemaker, when I leave Burgundy, and usually the lamb on the airplane ride back from Burgundy reminds me I am not in France anymore. I am eating American airplane lamb, and it is just not going to be the same. And then they'll bring you a little cheese and a little plastic thing, and it'll taste like rubber. And you're like, I really miss Epoisse. I really miss Latour. But that's really just kind of the European ideal is about the sense of place, the sense of a sense of restraint, a sense of perfection, the way that the grapes work together. And so let's start with the Old World. So in the Old World, vines mutate and adapt for centuries and millennia to a specific place. And then because those grapes were theirs, there was no such thing as Pinot Noir outside of Burgundy, France, probably until 1700? Burgundy was completely and totally owned, especially by the Valois Dukes and a guy named Duke Philip the Bold, who was the best of them, because you could not get Pinot Noir any other place in the world besides Burgundy, France. So interesting. The Valois Dukes and Duke Philip the Bold in the 14th and 15th century helped control European politics by virtue of who did and didn't get Burgundy wine. If you were the king of Sweden and you pissed off the Dukes of Burgundy, Sorry, no Burgundy wine, 2 years until you learn to be a better political ally. So how cool was it when Pinot Noir and Burgundy was actually influencing European politics? Because you couldn't go to California, you couldn't go to New Zealand. You know, you're not going to, I mean, maybe the little village in Turkheim, Alsace is going to have 10 Pinot Noir vines, but, you know, that's still probably controlled by the Valois Dukes. So how interesting that they have not only their own sense of place and their own sense of history, but also a sense of ownership. And then the Americans and the Europeans and various other regions come in and we steal grapes. We say, oh, Burgundy's beautiful, so let's take these grapes and transfer them to the New World. They obviously have a different expression, and you don't know by trial and error. I mean, you got to figure out where Pinot Noir grows. So you try it in 100 places, maybe 2 work. You throw away the other 98. You find the 2 that work. Let's say you found, you know, Sonoma Coast and Santa Maria Valley. Boom, beautiful place to grow Pinot Noir. Does it taste like Burgundy? Hell no, it doesn't. And on we go. Let's go back to the old world. Tradition and fame allowed for rustic production methods, dirty wine for centuries and millennia as there was no competition. This is where I'm going to start basically making trouble. And that is, I believe that Burgundy, Bordeaux, Europe, especially Italy, especially the Langhe, especially Chianti, especially these regions, were the only opportunity to buy fine wine for centuries, if not millennia. And they got lazy. They relied on their terroir. Their terroir kind of saved their rustic winemaking. Remember, Pasteur, it took until 1850s and 1860s for Louis Pasteur, looking through Leeuwenhoek's microscope, to understand the kinetics and the physical properties of primary fermentation. So before 1850, 1860, before the Civil War, we didn't even know how wine was made. We didn't know how yeast worked. We didn't know the process of breaking down in the molecular bond changes that, you know, the 3 billion bond changes required to take a tablespoon of sugar and transfer it into ethanol. So as a result, I think European winemaking got lazy. And as a result, you know, Burgundy, Bordeaux, they were used to getting, you know, $500,000 for their wine. Basically, what I'm going to say is, what really happened was, let's first start with Prohibition. So I think what made American wine kind of lead the charge for with the Australians. Obviously, I think the Australians currently kick our butt in research, in funding the research in their wine industry, and being sort of more together in their promotional and their scientific endeavors than I would say just about any other place, including California, including Oregon, Washington, and anywhere in the United States. Australians, you know how to fund your wine industry, but Americans did something amazing, and that is during Prohibition, we forgot how to make wine. So as France, as every other country that never went through Prohibition, continued to follow their mother, their grandmother, their grandfather, their great-grandfather, everyone who learned to or taught them to make wine. This is the way you do it. Rustic, old, non-scientific, pre-Pasteur. To a certain extent, a lot of it was pre-Enlightenment, a pre-Enlightenment thought in winemaking. So finally, after Prohibition ended, what ended up happening is UC Davis, a lot of the fine, especially UC Davis, but a lot of the universities in the United States, we decided to rediscover how to make wine. And we did so with a post-Enlightenment, post-Pasteur look. And even though there were, you know, Émile Pinault, and there were lots of winemakers and scientists in France at the Institut de Jules Guyot and the University of Bordeaux and Burgundy and Alsace, still studying how to make wine and doing a good job. I'm going to go ahead and say Americans pushed the reset button during Prohibition. And what we did is we started relying on science, not anecdote, and not stories from our fathers and our grandfathers. So we have the disadvantage of not being 8th and 9th generation winemakers that have that tradition, but thank goodness that we broke that tradition, because we left all that anecdotal rustic crap behind and we started making scientific wines. In fact, there's a lot of talk in the wine industry that if you go to UC Davis to learn how to make wine, you make really clean, really soulless wines. I'm going to go the opposite way. I'd say the UC Davis, the way that we learned to make wine after Prohibition and after UC Davis came back in, changed fundamentally the way wine is made in the world. We had technology, we had filtration technology. Later in the 80s and the early 90s, we started getting ozone machines. All of this technology started happening. Ozone machines took away a lot of chemicals from the winery, allowed us to spray vessels and just clean them organically without any chemical adds. All this stuff is about a clean cellar, a clean tank, clean barrels, making clean wine, which gave us an expression. And that puts us in a very difficult position right now. What is terroir? Because I have found, and I would think some of the great Burgundy experts like Jeffords or Emile Peynaud, if he was alive now, I think he would probably agree with me, is we're going to have to step back and take a fundamental moment to ask ourselves, do we even know what terroir tastes like in Burgundy as the wines become cleaner and cleaner and less affected by lactobacillus, less affected by Brettanomyces, less affected by nasty little things that are running around the cellars? As Burgundians are sending their kids over to California, Oregon, Washington, all these Argentina, Chile, to learn how to make clean wines, they're coming back to France. They're coming back to the old world with these new world production techniques. So I'm saying old world and new world is being maybe kind of shoved together and maybe turned into something that's a little bit more difficult, because as the wines get cleaner in Europe, they become fruitier. And as we learn which grapes grow best in California and best in the new world, we're making more balanced, more complex, earthy wines as well. So Europe is becoming cleaner and fruitier, especially as a result of elevated ripeness due to global warming and climate change. And then at the same time, California, maybe we're getting a little riper on top of that. So it's all about what you want. And if you love wine, you're living in a golden age, because we're living in the moment where there is such an amazing transfer of knowledge from the old world to the new world and from the new world to the old world, that I think the more important one right now is just the end of this movement of new world to old world, and then a reevaluation of every Grand Cru, every Premier Cru, every village, every first growth, second growth, super second, all the way down. How does clean wine and modern production techniques influence what we think about the old world? So right now, the difference between the old world and the new world is there's still tension. There's still a lot of stuff going on there, right? There's still like new world wine probably still is a little fruitier. Old wine is still a little bit more complex. The greatest wines in the world, to me, will always be grown in France. The worst wines in the world will probably always be grown in France. Some of the dirtiest wines I've ever had, Italy. Hopefully Italy's getting their cellars a lot cleaner. Last time I went to Italy, I tasted through maybe 20, 25 wineries. I thought 2 of the wineries were worth drinking, and everything else was basically like rustic, oxidized, Brettanomyces-laden crap. Even wines that I was told was fantastic. The wines I had in restaurants, much better. When I'd go to wineries, taste some wines, I'm asking, how in the world can you make these wines? And then they would take me into the cellar and they would show me, this is a 500-year-old huge, puncheon barrel that we use to have our wine in every year. I'm like, how the heck do you clean that thing every year? Like, oh, we can't. We clean it out, we rinse it with hot water, we flush it, and then we fill it again, and every 10 years, 12 years, we open it up and clean it. I'm like, now I know why your wines, I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, I'm like, well, now I know why your wines are undrinkable, because there's no sanitation here. So final message, sanitation matters. It does not guarantee making a great wine. Super, super massively clean filtered wines are not necessarily as soulful as wines that might have a little rusticity on the edge. If you taste complexity, to me, rusticity is just like Brettanomyces or any of the other things. If it's at the edge of perception and the wine is fantastic, screw it. I don't care if there's Brett in the wine, if it tastes great. If there's lacto in the wine tastes great. You got it at balance. If the wine's fruity, delicious, bright, and makes me happy, that's a good wine. And it's not necessarily has to be old world, has to be new world, has to be squeaky clean, has to be really dirty. I want the wines to be crafty. I want the person who makes them to pay attention. I want the person that makes them to be passionate about what they do and use their whole ass. That's pretty much the final summation. So if you're making Syrah, remember what Wes Hagen says: pay attention, be crafty, and use your whole ass. And I will say that will close our discussion on the old world and the new world. I did realize as I was putting together the show tonight, I still have not finished canopy management. And you need to hear this. I'm not going to be doing a show on Wednesday, but Friday we're going to have a great show. I'm going to go on vacation the next few days. I am going to be back on Thursday, and then we're getting ready for our Friday show. which is going to be mead. We're going to learn all about honey wine and why it's responsible for the idea of the honeymoon. Did you know the honeymoon is when you take 30 days to drink a barrel of mead with your new wife or husband, and that mead basically is a fertility potion. So your honeymoon is the 1 month you spend just drinking mead, having sex, and hopefully impregnating or being impregnated. That's the story of mead. We'll probably bring that up again on Friday. Jason Schoendorf, who is the mead maker and the owner of Monk's Meadery. On my Facebook this morning, Meadery got auto-corrected to, oh my gosh, it was something crazy. You'll have to look it up, but it is Monk's Meadery, and it's in Atlanta, Georgia, and these folks make some killer mead. I'm going to have some mead to taste with you guys. We're going to talk about it. So I hope you guys will join me at Friday at 5 o'clock. The Zoom link will be up. It'll also be, will not be on Instagram, but it will be on Facebook Live at J. Wilkes Wine in Santa Barbara. So Monk's Meadery, looking forward to it. And I'll remind you what the autocorrect was as soon as I remember it, and I'll talk about it on Friday. So I will not see all you wonderful and fine folk until Friday at 5 o'clock. Please come in and learn a little bit about mead with Justin and I. That's it for tonight. If you miss me greatly on Wednesday, 2 options. 1, independent study and day drinking. I trust you to get your homework done because that's just the kind of nice guy I am. The other option, of course, would be to go over to YouTube, to J. Wilkes Wine's YouTube page or the Miller Family Wine Company wine page and watch one of the older shows. We need some love over there. Please go over there, watch a couple videos, like us, follow us. We appreciate it. My boss will think that I'm actually working. Thank you so much. Lovely to see all of you. Kent Pierce is in the house. We're going to do Kent's Red. Maybe, I don't think we're doing it Friday, but Kent Pierce, who's on Instagram right now, was one of Jeff Wilkes' best friends. And we make a wine named after him, which is Kent's Red. And I'm sure we'll probably be showing that wine sometime real soon. So good to see you, Kent. Hope everything is well and you're getting out sailing. Sailing with Kent was probably Jeff Wilkes' favorite thing to do. And I bet Maggie got out there on the water too. Maggie was the black lab. Hope everything is great with all you guys. Stay safe, wear a mask, and as we always say, find someone in your family, find someone in your neighborhood, find someone that you may know just a little bit. See who needs some help out there. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's feeling this. We're doing good. We're going to do better, though. We have to do better. We have to protect the most the most vulnerable people in our community, and that includes me as a type 1 diabetic. So wear your mask to save me, grandma, and everybody else that could have a real hard time if they get that COVID. So be safe out there. Have a good time. Be good to each other. And if you can't be with the wine you love the wine you're with. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on Friday. Have a great night.